Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Dogman attacks teen at abandoned hospital in Kentucky. I live in southern Ohio near the Ohio River. Myself and a few friends decided to go explore the abandoned hospital that backed up to a giant hill and large forest across the river in Maysville, Kentucky. It was a local spot for dumb teenagers to go and scare each other and play grab-ass with their girlfriends. So running into other people wasn't uncommon, but you could usually tell if other people were there because there would be cars parked near it. That being said, on this night we were the only dumb teenagers there. The moment we got out of the car though, everything felt wrong. We knew we weren't allowed to be there because the building was condemned, but this felt like we were actually in danger. Which of course we always were because it was condemned, but it just felt different. Now by this point I had been to Hayeswood Hospital 20 times or so, and I was familiar with the layout. Once the three of us had gotten inside, we had been there about 45 minutes. We split up to tag some different places and explore. I went to go take pictures of the morgue in the basement and to see if I could photograph any orbs or anything really cool. I had been in the morgue for about 10 minutes when I smelled the most foul odor I've ever smelled. It was rot. I don't know what it was that was rotting. I imagine it was a large dog or a coyote, but all I could make out was it was about 40 pounds of rotting meat. I had just started to look at the meat chunk when I heard the slam of a steel door and what sounded like running through puddles of water. This meant whatever it was in the basement with me because the floor had about 3 inches of water standing in it. So naturally I figured it was my friends playing a prank on me. That was when I decided to get them back and scare them before they could scare me. Now the way the morgue was set up, you could actually climb on top of the coolers they used to store the bodies. So I hopped up there and laid in wait to scare the SHT out of my friend. I had been there no more than a minute when I heard screaming. Now I've known my friends my entire life, which at this point had been 19 years. I've never heard screaming like this. The screaming stopped and I heard hard footsteps running above me and what I can best describe as pounding. Now I'd be lying if I said I wasn't freaking out a little because this wasn't like my friends. It was usually hide behind a corner and jump out and go, "Got ya." This was different. This was dread I was starting to feel. As I continued to lay there, about 5 minutes passed when I heard panting and footsteps in the water. They were getting closer. That was when I smelled wet dog. But it wasn't just wet dog I was smelling. I was smelling that same smell of rot too. Then another steel door slammed, and I could tell it was the same door I passed before I got to the morgue door. The panting was even louder now, and honestly it sounded more like labored breathing and sniffing. Now at this point I'm terrified. I'm trying to slowly back away from the edge of the cooler I'm on so I can slip behind the wall the cooler backs up to and drop into the boiler room. I'm almost to the end of the cooler when I hear the morgue door slam open and break the tiles on the wall with the door handle. I'm less than 35 feet from whatever is panting and smelling like death, and all I can do is think run, run, run. I could hear the sniffing, and then I heard the deepest, most menacing growl I've ever heard. The movies and shows don't do justice to just how deep and rough a growl of this size sounds. It was sniffing me out. It was actually smelling where I had been. I dropped down behind the wall in the boiler room. I thanked God the door that connected the morgue was blocked with old gurneys and a locker on its side, which I thought would stop this thing from getting in. I was wrong, so very wrong. I hadn't been in the boiler room 30 seconds before I heard the pounding, scratching on the steel door. It sounded like Freddy Krueger was trying to carve his way through the steel door. Then I heard the sound that still haunts me to this day. It howled, and I mean it bellowed a howl so loud I had to cover my ears. Now on the other side of the boiler room was the access to the generator and the dock doors trucks used to unload and the hillside that lead to the woods. When I reached the other side of the room I could hear this thing slamming into the door and knocking the lockers away and the gurneys. I opened the door to the dock room, and when I looked back I saw the arm of this creature sticking through the opening it had made, and it was like a horror movie. It was a gray and brown mass of fur. It looked like a human arm, but it didn't because the hand was all wrong. The hand had 5 digits, but the claws would have made a bear run in fear. I slammed the door behind me and ran for the dock doors. The dock doors wouldn't budge, and I could hear the gurneys overturning and the lockers sliding on the floor. It was getting through, and the only thing between me and it now was a single door. I ran to one of the windows by the dock doors and proceeded to bust it out, which mangled my hand from the glass. Then as I was pulling myself through the window, I heard the door get slammed into, and one of the hinges completely flew off the door and hit the wall. I tumbled out of the window and hit the cold, wet ground. When I stood up, I saw it in the doorway. Now I'm 6 foot 4 inches and 250 pounds, not little by any means, and this thing took up the entire doorway, an 8 foot tall 3 foot wide door. It was covered head to toe in gray-brown fur. It had a very narrow snout, almost like a Doberman pinscher, and its ears were just barely visible because of the doorway. But I could tell they were pointing up just like a dog. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was completely paralyzed. This thing was staring right into my soul. Then it snarled, and that woke me from my disbelief of what I was seeing. I turned and ran. I ran up the hill into the woods to get around the hospital to get back to the street where the car was parked. I hadn't made it 25 feet when I heard it clawing to get out the window. I knew I would never make it to the car this way. So I ran back towards the hospital where the fire escape ladder was. I had used the ladder before to climb to the roof to take pictures of the entire town. I completely skipped the first 3 rungs on the ladder and was now inside the enclosed part of the fire escape. Again this thing howled, and I could feel waves of pure terror filling my body. My hand was killing me at this point, and I was getting blood on everything. Just as I was reaching the first floor window I could climb into, this thing slammed into the fire escape ladder, knocking me down a couple rungs. It leaped onto the outside of the fire escape and began clawing at my feet. Just as I reached the window, I felt it. Pain like nothing I've ever felt. It had grabbed just above my ankle and yanked, and in doing so shredded my boot, the end of my jeans, and into my flesh. I was able to pull myself into the first floor window, and I heard it push itself off the fire escape and head back the way it came. I'm now dragging my left leg and trying to keep my right hand in my hoodie pocket. The entrance we came in from is only about 150 feet away down the main hall and around a left turn. As I'm halfway down the hall, I hear the steel doors slamming again. I'm dragging myself down the hall, just trying to stay focused on getting out of this hellhole. Then the howling starts again, and I can hear it getting closer. I make the turn and hear the pounding coming up the stairs from the basement. I make it to the entrance and hear the patting of hands and feet on the floor. I made the mistake of looking back just as it rounded the corner, and it was running on all fours like a real dog. I bolted down the hill towards the street where the car was parked and realized the car was gone. They left me. My only way of escape was gone. I just zoned out and kept running down the hill. My leg was throbbing, my hand was in agony, and all I could think was, I'm going to be fucking dog kibble. Finally I made it to the first house I could find and ran full force into the door and began pounding on it like a crazy person. Thank God this little old lady was home, because she opened the door and I literally fell inside. Just before I kicked the door closed, standing up on 2 legs at the end of her driveway, was this monster. I broke down in tears. I didn't know what to do. Luckily the old lady had called the cops because a crazy person who was bleeding everywhere just fell into her home. When the cops got there and asked me what happened, I told them the same thing I've said here. Of course they didn't believe me and thought I was on drugs. The EMTs took me to the hospital, and when they did blood work and found no substance in my system, they then concluded I was attacked by a wild dog. I ended up with 36 stitches in my leg and 17 in my hand. I had to get rabies shots and tell the local wildlife officer my story. He informed me that they had reports of wild dog packs running around the outside of town, ransacking garbage cans, and killing some of the local pets. I informed him that it wasn't a pack of wild dogs, and it was a giant Dogman. But they all just thought I was crazy. The only thing I had in my favor was the claw mark on my leg. Even the doctors were confused about how a wild dog could make a mark like that. Now you know my story, and you know why I absolutely know we are not at the top of the food chain. I've never been back to Hayeswood Hospital, and I've deterred anyone from ever going there. That experience has haunted me for the last 11 years of my life. It has made me into the overcautious man I am. I always have to know where every exit is when I walk into a building, and I always know where large clumps of woods are. This experience changed me forever, and it changed the way I look at the world we live in. Just because we all haven't seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means some people haven't been hunted for their life. I have no doubt what stalked me that night was the Dogman. I know it in my bones. I am.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.